Jennifer, thank you so much for being here and being a guest.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this episode. And let's just dive right in. Let's start with what inspired you to pursue a career in recruiting and coaching.
Yeah, so I had really always been a little bit passionate about the aspect, but really what was the tipping scale? Shortly after my husband and I got married, he lost his job. And then shortly after that, I lost my job. And I had come from a background in executive office management, kind of an EA position, so a lot of high organization.
Hmm.
And as we were both job searching, working with recruiters, I saw so many balls getting dropped. And I just kept thinking, I could do better. Like, this is
Yeah.
really just a matter of keeping organized.
Hmm.
Um, and so for me, it was a matter of the way to help find people connect the puzzle pieces that really help them to be fulfilled. I am an avid proponent of find something that you love and you'll never work a day in your life, that old adage. And
Yeah.
if I can help the people that I'm working with to really pull back those layers and discover what it is that makes them the most excited, that is why I'm into recruiting. It's really helping to connect the dots from company, culture, jobs, duties, all of those components together.
Hmm. Perfect. Thank you. And so that listeners have a better understanding, who are your typical clients and what, industries or roles do you most frequently place in?
Yes. So historically, I have been in the healthcare industry. My agency is really focused more on the medical, so med tech, medical device, pharmaceutical, biotech. Ironically, I am currently working with a client that is actually in the software as a systems and helping to fill more IT roles.
Hmm.
But I started my career in what's called RPO, which stands for Recruitment Placement Outsourcing. And I was able to get a versatility of a lot of different industries. So from that, I kind of learned where my wheelhouse was. But I've filled everything from nurses to psychiatrists and counselors to sales reps to account execs to legal to finance. But
Hmm.
right now, I am focused a little bit more in the med space.
Okay. Okay. And it's got to be nice to be able to place in a lot of different industries for a breath of fresh air. Is that what you feel being in recruiting and being able to place, in different industries at different times?
Yes, yeah, I like it because of that fact. So you don't necessarily have boredom.
Hmm.
You're constantly filling the same position over and over. So it does give a little bit of that versatility.
Hmm. Okay. And just so the listeners know, you do also have an executive coaching or a coaching side of the business. So do you want to give us a brief little understanding of what your focus is there?
Yes. So to be perfectly honest, my coaching aspect is a little bit of a specific niche. I am currently right now focused on coaching predominantly executive female leaders.
Hmm.
It's really those individuals who have been in their careers, they're trying to get to that next level. And they're almost at that point where they're so good at the jobs that they're doing. They're being stuck and they're held captive and not being able to move into that next organization with internally, that next opportunity internally. So they have to leave. But there's this dichotomy of they're afraid to leave because they don't know what they don't know. And
Hmm.
so a lot of that coaching really comes into peeling back the layers and helping them determine what it is that they're really looking for. And
Hmm.
I have found, especially mid-career professional women, are coming to a just a massive juxtaposition in their lives that they are not sure that the values of the organizations that they're working for or that they're pursuing are in alignment with who they are. And so it's a matter of trying to figure out where that intersection is and help them to coach through that as well.
Gotcha. Thank you for explaining that. Let's dive into some details here on some questions I had prepared for you. So, what are some common mistakes that candidates make during the job search process, and how can they avoid them? What first comes to your mind when you hear that?
I think the biggest mistake is candidates reaching out to recruiters and just saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. Can you help me?"
Hmm.
Recruiters, to be honest, just don't have the time for those types of responses. And I feel like that is how recruiters get a bad rep because a lot of times those are the messages that go completely unanswered. There is a little bit of advice and the fact that as a candidate, you need to have some skin in the game and some proof of validation of who you are and what you can bring. You need to make sure that if you're reaching out to a recruiter, you can have a specific job that they're working on or a specific industry and really be able to identify what it is. To just say, I'm an IT professional, find me a job, especially if you're reaching out to somebody that is a in-house corporate recruiter. Those
Mhm.
recruiters are carrying anywhere between 25 to 50 open job positions. They do not have the time to look through that and just say, okay, of all of our jobs, let me tag and align you.
Mhm.
And so that would be my biggest number one piece. The second piece is, as a candidate, you want to make sure that your resume and your LinkedIn are current, that they mirror one another. They should pretty much be apples to apples. And those both should be essentially what you would look at as a branding tool. You are now branding yourself. And so you're branding yourself to prospective hiring managers, to prospective organizations, and to prospective recruiters that are in that headhunting space. With that, you want to make sure that you're including metrics. You want to incorporate references and recommendations, and you really want to highlight the skills of what you can bring to an organization. You can worry about the what's in it for me when you get the interview, but while you're looking to get your foot in the door, focus on what you bring to the organization.
Mhm. I love that because that's exactly what we love talking about too. So thank you for sharing that. And I see that common mistake happen all the time. I have people ask me, "Hey, what's the best way to get to know recruiters?" And it's so nice for, I hope our listeners are listening to this because we've had a few guests, the most recent guests as well, also saying that, "Hey, we don't look for candidates, right? We are, we have a client and we need to fill a specific role." So if you're just going out to the recruiters and saying, "Hey, I'm looking, take a look at my background and find a job for me," it can be frustrating. And I agree, it can be that kind of that problem that when a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth working with recruiters because they don't understand who the recruiter's employer or client actually is. So I love that. And let's dive into I've got a question for you about cultural fit. So how important is cultural fit in versus skill sets when it comes to finding a new role?
I love that question, but I am going to give a caveat of it is so specific to the client that you're working with. There are some clients that are very, very focused on, nope, this candidate absolutely needs to be a culture fit. We can train skills.
Mm-hmm.
If the culture fit doesn't align, no way, no how, I don't care who they are. You have some organizations that are the polar opposite, and they are like, no, we don't care, what they bring. We just want this person to be able to come in, hit the ground running. We don't have time to train. So
Mm-hmm.
it is really important to take the time, whether you're working with a recruiter or an internal person within the company. So it's an internal recruiter or an agency recruiter. As the candidate, you need to ask that question. What does the culture look like? And what is the hiring manager's expectations? What I have always coached the candidates that I'm interviewing is to ask the question, what are you expecting the person that's filling this role to accomplish at 30, 60, and 90 days? Those questions give you so much more clarity about the organizational culture, the organizational structure, and exactly what they're looking for than by specifically addressing those apples to apples of, well, I have software's experience, or I've been a sales leader, or I've done medical device. You want to make sure that you are specifically highlighting those skills that you're going to accomplish in that 30, 60, 90 days and make sure it aligns with what they're looking for.
Thank you for sharing that. And what I'm seeing, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'd love to know if we're on the same page on this, is I'm seeing that if you're getting past the applicant tracking systems, you actually get to the interview, right? Then the skill sets have already kind of spoken for themselves, right? And then a lot of it is, okay, do we actually like this person, right? And so I agree in asking that question. What a good question. I hope people kind of write that down so that they can know what to focus on so that they're not interviewing for a general interview, but they're interviewing for the exact opportunity at hand. Is that a good way to kind of say it, or do you agree with that?
Yes, 100%. And I think the other piece with that, and you'll probably speak to this too, candidates right now, the job market is intense. Like I've never seen this in the 12 years that I've been a recruiter as intense as it is. You really, as a candidate, need to track the companies that you're applying to, the job titles that you're applying to. And you need to, when you're going to those interviews, you need to have your own due diligence and intelligence. Because just like Jesse's saying, this is not a matter of trying to make sure the skill set's there. It's, are you that cultural fit? And you want to make sure that you are addressing specifically that role. If you go in and you haven't done that due diligence and you're just trying to placate and say whatever to get through that interview, recruiters and hiring managers are going to see right through that, and you're not going to go further in that interview process.
Mhm. I honestly, what I think I'm starting to see more and more is with so much competition going on in the market in every industry that I'm seeing right now, because we work with clients in every industry, and what we're seeing is some people just go through that habit of, quantity over quality. They just apply to every position. They don't know the companies. They just know, okay, generally I fit. And it's frustrating for them, right? To kind of showcase the candidate side, which I'm sure you're seeing this. It's frustrating to say, well, I'm going to take so much time to look at the company, look at the information about the company when there's 5 interviews, a lot of things going on. So I think I want listeners to know that we both see that side, right? We're seeing that. We know it's frustrating, but if you really want to stand out, not everybody's doing it. Not everybody's looking up the company. Not everybody knows what's going on with the company and what they're looking for and what their culture is. And so I think those are great points that you're highlighting. So let's dive into when we're talking about the market and different trends. What are you currently seeing? I know you're seeing a lot of competition. You mentioned you've never seen anything like this before, but especially in the industries you place in, what are you seeing? What trends are you seeing right now?
I think the biggest piece is there's such a high push, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, on metrics. Before it used to be you could leave a really ambiguous job description or I accomplished X, Y, and Z without it being incredibly detailed. Leaders want to see numbers. And I think, especially if you're looking at a larger corporate or owned organization, they're now responding to stakeholders and the governance boards. And because of that, everything is tied to those numbers. So if you cannot quantify by percentages and metrics than what you've been able to do, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge for you. I think the other aspect that I'm seeing a lot of organizations, there's been a huge shift in hiring individuals that are willing to really adapt to the organizational culture, but they have to be avid learners and yet be supportive to one another. They're really looking for team players right now, is the big piece that I'm seeing,
Hmm.
and not people to come in and say, well, that's not my job. I don't want to do that. It's individuals that are willing to jump in, support the organization, support their colleagues, and really be in that team player environment. As it relates specifically to like the medical field and medical device, more and more companies are looking for people that have had that experience. And I am just hot off of coming from hiring a lot of medical sales reps. And one of the questions that I got often was a lot of reps that were working for like ADP, enterprise, those types of roles where they're looking to make that pivot into medical sales. These companies want somebody that has had some level of expertise calling on those same call points. So I always recommend to anybody that's looking to make that shift, start by maybe working in pharmaceutical sales or even more of like a wound care clinic or something like that, where you're still selling a bag of products, but you're getting access to those clinics, maybe even a small amount of access to the OR, because some of the higher operation positions that you're in the OR all the time, those companies aren't going to hire someone right off the bat without that prior at least 1 year of OR experience. So that would be the other biggest recommendation.
Thank you for sharing that. It's another frustration I hear candidates talk about all the time of, I'm a perfect fit. I could go across industries, but the harsh reality is not all companies want to take the time to train you in a new industry, right? And so it's a lot easier if you're in a dire need to make a change to look in your industry, but that's great advice that if you want to shift industries, hey, go about it this route. So thank you for sharing that. And are you seeing, I mean, that kind of dives right into the next question as well. What skills or qualities are you seeing employers prioritizing right now? I know you mentioned team players. Is that what you'd say, or what other thoughts do you have on that?
I think the biggest thing is someone who's a team player. I feel like the other piece is really technology. Technology is growing. I mean, use of AI, let's be honest, it's out there. And more companies are looking for people that have that tech savviness. If you're not necessarily, like, I'm not saying that you have to be an expert and everyone has to be a developer or a programmer, but it's just the willingness to adapt and be an early adapter. That is huge to organizations. And they're looking for people that will come in, be those early adapters, and have that willingness to coach and mentor others.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you. You've got a lot of great points there. And I hope people are listening. I hope people are understanding and will listen. I mean, this isn't live, right? But will take some of this and apply it into their job search, because there's a lot of people looking, or a lot of people starting to get the idea that, hey, I might be exiting my company. So these are great skill sets and tools to have when looking. Let's say somebody's listening and they say, I would just love to follow Jennifer. I'd love to know more about her coaching, love to know more about her recruiting business. What's the best way to find you?
Yes. So my recruiting business, my website is www.med-linkrecruitment.com. So that's where all of my things recruitment are. And then the coaching side is going to be at www.sjmcoaching.co.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for being such an amazing guest, Jennifer. I hope we can have you on again soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. I really appreciated it.